on this case. Do you agree with the judgment of the case? Why or why not?
I agree with it. There's a lot of red light behavior, so.
Right.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I mean, yeah, because, well, yeah, I agree with it, but I think that there should have been, the server should have been, there were some, she did some things, she didn't report it right away, she waited until everything hit the fan. And then it was, he harassed me when this had been happening the whole time, when it could have been handled from jump, I think. And also the whole, because they didn't investigate the food thing, but, you know, they should have investigated that, and then they could have just fired her, and then...
If that had been the case. But in this situation, he accused her of something that...
was after the fact. Yeah.
Well, and she didn't even do it. Another employee. Because he said it was her, because he didn't actually witness it himself. It was an awful hearsay.
Yeah.
So that was just finding a reason to terminate her when it actually wasn't even her that did it in the first place.
So how much did she get for this settlement?
I didn't research how much she got.
Oh,
so I'm sure it was a pretty good.
That's probably one of the questions I can't answer.
No, you can ask that question. I just didn't research that part. How could upper management team have better handled this scenario?
Know what's going on with their employees.
Well, did they receive a report, or?
They just took the word of the manager.
Yeah.
They didn't investigate. They didn't ask her any questions. They took one side of the story and made their decision based on it.
Are non-fraternization rules, are those still, like, is that discrimination? Like, can you have a policy?
You can have a policy, but it's really hard to enforce something like that. You can tell your employees that it's discouraged, but, and most people don't want to date somebody they work with anyway, but some people, that's fine with them. But it's really hard to actually enforce it. You can say it and you can hear about it, but there are always ways around it, so you can't really make the person not date somebody that they work with. But you can say that it's
discouraged. Well, and I was just saying, if that had been, I don't know if that was the case, but if that had been the case, then I think maybe the manager would have been a little bit less apt to take it that far, because he knows then it would get out and it's discouraged, and he's supposed to be encouraging all of it.
Exactly. And a lot of companies, for the most part, most companies that I've worked for, they usually have their fraternization with management level people. They don't usually even try to enforce it with first level employees, because they're going to do what they're going to do. But at a management or supervisory level, you're kind of a role model for everybody else in the organization, so they can enforce it a little bit more with leadership. So they usually do actually make it known to leadership that this is not something that we want to do. This is probably not something we want to even risk your career for. So to them, it's heavier because it's their career. If somebody just works there and they really don't care, they just get a paycheck all day long. So they don't even really push it with first level employees too much. So if you were the server, how would you have handled this?
Well, I think the first incident where I guess the first physical incident where she was going to the car and there was him trying to prevent her from getting in the car or closing the door. I think that would have been the first, like, real red light where she should have said, all right, I need to talk to somebody immediately about this.
Right. Or even as soon as she decided that she was going to end the relationship, told him that we need him, and then maybe gone to his boss and just said, cases Kentucky.
Right.
I'm just letting you know.
Disclosure of.
Right. I made a bad decision. You go bad. Just want everybody to know what's going on in front.
That's if she knew that it was crazy, right?
Well, she broke up with him for a reason.
So maybe, yeah. She figured something out, right?
He was already brushing up against her and kept saying
Right.
and everything, so.
At work.
That should have been the first thing, okay, go talk to somebody, tell somebody about, or at least let him know, first of all, go to him, this is done, not acceptable, do it again, I'm gonna pick up the chain.
Right. And he clearly knew he was wrong, because he asked her what she gonna do. So if you don't think you're doing anything wrong, why would you even ask?
Right.
So, if you were the manager that used to do the server, how would you handle this?
Not been crazy.
Nobody wants to be the manager.
We'll talk to outside of business hours.
I wouldn't have had a relationship with somebody that I work for. It puts you and the company liable for sexual harassment.
It compromises the situation.
Right, in any situation, because really he can't win. Even if he had been gracious and she had not been, then he still looks like the bad guy. Or if he tries to discipline her afterwards, she can always bring that. It just
say it's retaliation or something.
Right. So then you just.
So what made this sexual harassment versus just a lover's quarrel?
Brushing up against her and trying to force her or keep her from getting into the car, and she kept saying that she was done with it.
It affected work.
And unjustly fired.
Terminated. Okay, good job, man. So the next topic is FMLA. Family Medical Leave Act. Okay. So FMLA is Family Medical Leave Act. It was provided to, the intent was to protect jobs of people who either had serious illnesses, were caring for a child, a parent with a serious illness, and especially with baby boomers getting older in age, there are a lot more people taking care of kids and their parents now. So they were trying to make sure that that employers could keep some of their most talented employees and not lose them based on the fact that they had to care for a parent that was sick all the time, or a cancer, if their employee was a cancer patient, they had to go to the doctor all the time and end up being terminated for excessive absences. So FMLA provides employees with up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave. Now, an employer can determine whether or not they want to pay you or not. It's completely up to the employee. It is not a requirement by any means. And the 26 weeks, like I said, this came about in 2008. President Obama passed that for service members that were ill or injured in the line of duty. So a spouse can take care of them for up to 26 weeks. So, and while an employee is on FMLA, the employer is required to maintain their portion of benefits that they pay. If they don't pay a portion of benefits, they're not required to pay anything if they weren't paying anything before. But if they have paid a percentage of their benefits prior to you being on FMLA, they have to continue it. So,
Just for health.
health-related benefits. So if there's disability or life insurance, something like that. Life insurance usually is an elective thing, but usually health and disability. So, and most employers now pay for their employees' life insurance. So, eligibility requirements for FMLA. An employee must work for a covered employer and have worked for the employer at least 12 months and have worked at least 1,250 hours during the 12 months before they start FMLA. And an eligible employer is one that has 50 employees, and those employees are located within 75-mile radius. Eligible employers are required to grant FMLA leave for up to 12 months to birth or care of a newborn, for adoption or foster placement, care for a spouse, child, or parent, for serious health conditions of the actual employee themselves that renders them unable to perform their jobs, like if you're on radiation or chemo, clearly you would not be able to work that day. Or the day after, usually. So that, for example, a covered family member's active duty or call to active duty in the National Guard or Reserves, that's 12 weeks, and up to 26 weeks to care for an injured or ill covered service member.
I thought there was another law that said covers people being called active duty.
There's more under USERA.
That's it.
Yeah. A lot more under USERA, as Obama expanded it significantly. For the use of 26 weeks of FMLA leave for an injured or ill covered service member, the 12-month period begins on the first day the eligible employee takes FMLA leave to care for the service member and ends 12 months after. Now, the 12-month period, so usually it's a rolling calendar. So you get the 26 weeks or the 12 weeks within 12 months. Does everybody understand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you start in August, you have until the next August to live those 12 weeks if you need them.
Maybe next year it starts all over?
Starts all over.
Fantastic.
If you have worked the 1,200
Sometimes it puts me on blast.
hours.
I'm working out much.
If you work the 1,200 hours, 1,250 hours. Now, the employer can request and require that you submit a certification, minimum certification for FMLA leave. And this must be completed by a relevant attending physician. You can't get your psychiatrist to vouch for your cancer. So it needs to be a relevant attending physician. Now, all employers don't require this, and they don't have to, but if they do and you fail to submit to it, they can very easily deny the FMLA if you did not give them the information to support why you want to be off. So, it is always the employer's discretion to designate whether they will pay you or not. If an employee refuses to provide required information and a medical certification of FMLA, they don't have to bring it to you. So, takeaways from the session that I would love for you to remember is that employers cannot discriminate based on race, birth, place, disability, age, pregnancy status, sex, religion, color, in relation to employment conditions. And questions and interviews have to be directly related to the job. And cannot be not directly inquiring of protected classifications noted previously. Sexual harassment is any unwanted sexual contact. This includes conversation, visual material at work, physical contact, threats, or intimidation. Employers are not allowed to retaliate against employees that file sexual harassment with the EEOC. Employees, both male and female, who have worked for an eligible employer for 12 months and 1,250 hours in a year are eligible for 12 weeks of FMLA leave. As of 2008, FMLA allowed 26 weeks of leave for certain members. If an employee refuses to supply an employer with medical certification for FMLA leave, they can be denied. FMLA leave can be either paid or unpaid based on the employer's discretion. So, does anyone have any questions about what we covered today? No. Thank you so much for attending. You guys are a really smart group. You are
these post-training surveys anonymous?
I will know. According to your handwriting contest.
That's a better question.
But if you would fill out my post-training survey and tell me what you thought about the training.
My left hand.